It was a hot afternoon. The streets buzzed with life. Cars honking, traders shouting, people moving in all directions. It was just another busy day. Naomi walked quickly, trying to catch a bus. She had been running errands all morning, and the heat was unbearable. As she passed by a small alley between two buildings, something made her stop. A sound. Faint, weak, almost like a whisper. She turned her head, listening. The noise came again, a soft, desperate cry. Her heart skipped. She glanced around. People walked past, minding their business. No one else seemed to hear it. For a moment she hesitated. She had places to be. But something about the sound made her uneasy. Slowly she stepped into the narrow alley. Trash bins lined the walls, and the air smelled of rotting food. Her eyes scanned the ground, and then she saw it. A tiny bundle of cloth. Still, unmoving. But then, a slight twitch. Naomi's breath caught in her throat. She rushed forward and crouched down. Carefully, she pulled back the dirty fabric. A baby. Its skin was hot to the touch. Tiny fists clenched and unclenched as if fighting for life. The baby's face was red and its lips were dry and cracked. Panic gripped her. The baby was burning with fever. Naomi looked around. "Hello? Someone?" she called. No one answered. Who had left the child here? And why? The baby let out another weak cry, barely a sound now. It was struggling. Time was running out. She had to do something. Now. Without thinking, Naomi scooped up the baby and ran. As you enjoy this gripping story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an exciting update. Also, share this story with your friends and family to spread the thrill. Your support keeps us going. Naomi ran, clutching the baby tightly against her chest. The child's body felt scorching hot, its small frame trembling. Every few seconds, the baby let out a weak cry, a sound so fragile, so desperate that it sent chills down her spine despite the burning heat of the afternoon. Her mind raced. Where could she go? Who could help? The streets were packed, but no one seemed to notice her panic. People moved around, laughing, talking, selling, and buying like nothing was wrong. Naomi's heart pounded. How could they not see? How could they not care? She spotted a small pharmacy by the roadside and rushed inside. The air smelled of medicine, and shelves were lined with different drugs. An elderly pharmacist stood behind the counter, adjusting his glasses as he looked up at her. "Please help," Naomi gasped, panting. "This baby, it has fever. I don't know what's wrong, but—" The pharmacist frowned and glanced at the child in her arms. He reached out and placed a wrinkled hand on the baby's forehead. Immediately his face changed. "This child is burning up," he muttered. "Where are the parents?" "I don't know," Naomi admitted. "I found the baby abandoned in an alley. It was just lying there, burning with fever." The pharmacist pulled his hand back. "I can't do much here. This baby needs a hospital, a real doctor." Naomi's stomach twisted. "Can't you just give me something? Medicine? Anything?" The old man shook his head. "A fever this high is dangerous. It could be an infection or something worse. You need to go. Now." Naomi's hands trembled. She had hoped for a quick solution, but deep down she knew the old man was right. The baby's condition was serious. Without wasting another second, she turned and ran out of the pharmacy. Her legs ached as she pushed through the crowd. Sweat dripped down her forehead, and the baby's weak cries grew fainter. She spotted a small clinic ahead and rushed toward it. Inside, the waiting area was filled with patients, mothers with sick children, old men waiting for checkups, people coughing into tissues. The receptionist, a tired-looking woman in her 40s, glanced up as Naomi approached. "Please," Naomi said, gasping for breath. "This baby, I found it abandoned. It's very sick." The receptionist barely reacted. "Do you have the baby's medical records?" "What?" Naomi's eyes widened. "No! I told you I found this child abandoned." The woman sighed and shook her head. "We can't admit a patient without identification or medical history. It's hospital policy." Naomi felt like screaming. "Are you serious? This baby might die." The receptionist glanced at the child, her expression unreadable. "You need to take the baby to a government hospital. Private clinics have strict rules." Naomi's frustration boiled over. The baby in her arms shivered, its tiny fingers twitching. Every second counted. "Where's the nearest hospital?" she demanded. The receptionist scribbled something on a piece of paper and slid it across the desk. "It's about 5 kilometers from here." 5 kilometers. Naomi's throat tightened. She had no car, no taxi in sight, and the hospital was far. but she had no choice. She turned on her heels and bolted out the door. The streets were against her. Naomi sprinted through the streets, her arms wrapped tightly around the baby. Sweat dripped down her back. The sun felt like fire on her skin, but she kept going. A few people stared. A woman running with a baby in her arms wasn't something you saw every day, but no one stopped to ask if she needed help. At a busy intersection, cars zoomed past, ignoring the traffic light. Naomi's heart pounded. She couldn't afford to wait. She took a deep breath, then dashed across the road. A loud horn blared. A car screeched to a stop just inches from her. "Are you crazy?" the driver shouted. But Naomi didn't stop. She didn't even look back. She kept running. By the time she reached a bus stop, her legs felt like jelly. A bus pulled up, people scrambling to get inside. Naomi pushed forward. "Please, I need to get to the hospital. It's urgent." The conductor, a short man with a scar on his cheek, eyed her suspiciously. "You got money?" Naomi froze. She had left her purse at home. In her rush, she hadn't even thought about money. I don't have cash, but this baby." "No money, no ride," the conductor said, turning away. Despair hit her like a punch to the chest. Then a voice. "Let her in." Naomi turned. A young man, probably in his late 20s, stood behind her. He pulled out some cash and handed it to the conductor. "Her fare is covered," he said. Naomi stared at him in shock. I don't know how to thank you." "Just save that baby," the man said simply. Naomi climbed onto the bus, holding the baby close. The vehicle jerked forward, the hospital still minutes away. But time was running out. The baby in her arms suddenly went silent. Naomi's heart nearly stopped. The baby, who had been weakly crying moments ago, had gone silent. Too silent. She shook the tiny body gently. "Hey, stay with me. Just hold on." No response. Terror gripped her chest. She pressed a trembling hand against the baby's back. It was still warm, still breathing, but faintly. Too faintly. She turned to the man who had paid her fare. "Please, tell the driver to go faster. The baby." The man saw the fear in her eyes and immediately acted. He pushed his way to the front and spoke urgently to the driver. "Sir, this is an emergency. A child's life is at risk. Step on it." The driver glanced back at Naomi, noticed the lifeless baby in her arms, and cursed under his breath. Without another word, he pressed the accelerator. The bus sped through traffic, swerving between cars. Passengers murmured complaints, but Naomi didn't care. Every second mattered. As the hospital's red emergency sign came into view, Naomi felt tears sting her eyes. They were close. Almost there. The bus screeched to a stop. The young man helped Naomi off. "Go. I'll pay for any damage if the driver gets fined." Naomi didn't waste a second. She ran toward the emergency entrance, pushing through the doors, gasping for breath. "Nurse, somebody help!" she cried. A doctor in a white coat turned toward her. His face, once calm, changed the moment he saw the baby. "Give me the child," he ordered. Naomi didn't hesitate. She handed the baby over, her arms feeling suddenly empty and cold. The doctor immediately placed the baby on a gurney, checking its pulse. A team of nurses rushed forward, moving quickly. "Get oxygen," one of them shouted. Naomi took a step forward. "Doctor, is the baby going to be okay?" The doctor didn't answer. Instead, he barked more orders. "We need fluids. Fast. This child is severely dehydrated." They wheeled the baby down the hallway. Naomi tried to follow, but a nurse blocked her path. "You have to wait outside," she said firmly. Naomi shook her head. "No, I found that baby." "Are you the mother?" Naomi hesitated. "No, but..." "Then please wait here." The door slammed shut, leaving Naomi standing alone. Her hands trembled, her heart pounded. She had done everything she could. Now all she could do was wait and pray. The unexpected problem. Naomi paced the hospital waiting area, her stomach in knots. Time dragged on, each second feeling like an hour. Finally, the doctor came back. Naomi rushed to him. "Doctor, how is the baby?" The doctor sighed, wiping sweat from his brow. "We stabilized the child for now, but there's a problem." Naomi's breath caught. "What problem?" "This baby has a serious infection, a deadly one." Naomi's knees felt weak. "What kind of infection?" "We are running tests, but from the symptoms, high fever, dehydration, difficulty breathing, it could be meningitis, pneumonia, or even sepsis. If left untreated, it could be fatal." Naomi's hands clenched into fists. "So treat the baby, do whatever it takes." The doctor sighed heavily. "It's not that simple." Naomi's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? The doctor hesitated, then said something that made Naomi's blood run cold. We can't begin treatment without legal consent. Naomi blinked. What? This baby is a minor. No guardian, no parent, no identification. We need proper authorization to proceed with full treatment. Naomi stared at him in disbelief. You're saying you're going to let this baby die over paperwork? The doctor looked uncomfortable. I want to help, but this is hospital policy. If we don't follow protocol, I could lose my license. Naomi's anger exploded. This is a helpless child. Who cares about paperwork? I do, the doctor said firmly, because one mistake could shut down this entire hospital. Naomi wanted to scream. This baby was fighting for its life, and they were talking about rules? She had to do something, now. Naomi's mind raced. The baby was lying in a hospital bed, burning with fever, and yet these people were talking about paperwork, legal guardians, protocols. She gritted her teeth. This child had no one. If she walked away now, the baby might not make it. She turned to the doctor, her voice shaking with desperation. Doctor, if this baby dies because of your hospital's rules, can you live with that? The doctor's jaw tightened, his eyes conflicted. It's not that simple. Then make it simple, Naomi snapped. You said the baby has a serious infection. You know what to do, so do it. The doctor let out a long sigh and rubbed his forehead. Listen, I can give temporary care, oxygen, IV fluids, fever reducers. But for full treatment, like antibiotics or emergency procedures, I need consent from a legal guardian. Naomi's breath hitched. A legal guardian. That was it. She straightened her back and looked him dead in the eyes. Then make me the guardian. The doctor's brow shot up. What? I found the baby. I brought the baby here. If it means saving that child's life, I'll take responsibility. The doctor hesitated. You can't just claim guardianship like that. There's a process. Social services, the police. Then call them, Naomi snapped. But until they get here, treat this baby. The doctor looked at her for a long moment. Then, finally, he exhaled sharply. Fine, but if anyone asks, you never heard this from me. He turned to the nurse. Get the antibiotics ready. Now. Naomi nearly collapsed from relief. The nurse rushed off, and the doctor disappeared behind the doors. The baby was going to get the treatment it needed. But Naomi knew this wasn't over. The police get involved. 15 minutes later, as Naomi sat in the waiting area, a tall man in a police uniform walked into the hospital. His sharp eyes scanned the room before landing on her. He strode over. Are you Naomi? Her pulse quickened. Yes. I'm Officer Daniel, he said. We received a report about an abandoned baby brought here. Naomi swallowed hard. Yes, I found the baby in an alley. The officer nodded. We need to ask you a few questions. Naomi's heart pounded. Had the hospital called the police? Was she in trouble? She followed the officer to a quiet corner. Miss Naomi, he began, did you see anyone suspicious near where you found the baby? No, she admitted. The alley was empty. The baby was just lying there, wrapped in a dirty cloth. The officer scribbled notes. Do you have any idea who the parents might be? No. Did you touch anything at the scene? Just the baby. The officer looked up. You understand that child abandonment is a serious crime, right? Naomi nodded. Of course, that's why I brought the baby here. The officer studied her face. So why didn't you report it to the police first? Naomi clenched her fists. Because I didn't have time. The baby was dying. If I had wasted another minute looking for a police station, the child might not have survived. The officer stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Fair enough. Naomi exhaled in relief. But we still need to follow protocol, he continued. A social worker is on the way to take custody of the child. Her stomach twisted. Wait, what happens to the baby now? The officer shrugged. Depends. If no relatives come forward, the child will go into the foster system. Foster care. Naomi's chest tightened. The baby was already abandoned once. If no one claimed the child, it could end up lost in the system, moved from home to home, never knowing love. That couldn't happen. She wouldn't let it happen. Naomi took a deep breath and looked the officer in the eye. What if I want to keep the baby? The officer's brows shot up. You want to adopt it? Naomi hesitated. Did she? She hadn't even considered it until now. But something in her heart had already made the decision. This baby had no one, but Naomi was here. She had fought for this child's life. Could she walk away now? The officer studied her face. Adoption is a long process, Miss Naomi. You'd have to pass background checks, home inspections, legal paperwork. I don't care how long it takes, she said firmly. Just tell me what I need to do. The officer was silent for a moment. Then he sighed. I'll put you in touch with a social worker, but until then, this baby stays under hospital care. Naomi nodded. That was enough for now. She just wanted to make sure the baby would never be abandoned again. She had no idea that her fight was only beginning. Naomi sat beside the hospital crib watching the tiny baby sleep. The fever had finally gone down and the baby's breathing was steady. Relief washed over her. The child had survived. But her fight wasn't over. The social worker, a woman in a gray suit with tired eyes, sat across from her. Miss Naomi, I admire your courage in saving this child. But adoption is not easy. You're young, unmarried, and Naomi lifted her chin. And I love this child. Isn't that what matters? The social worker sighed. Love is important, but raising a baby alone is difficult. I don't care, Naomi said firmly. I will do whatever it takes. The woman studied her. You barely know this child. Naomi shook her head. I know that this baby was left to die. I know that I was the only one who cared enough to pick it up, and I know that I won't let this child suffer again. The social worker leaned back. It won't be an easy road. I'm not afraid of struggle, Naomi said. The woman was silent for a long moment. Then finally she nodded. All right, I'll start the process, but you'll need to meet all the requirements. Naomi felt a lump in her throat. This was really happening. 1 month later, Naomi pushed open the door to her small apartment. Her apartment. She had worked tirelessly to prove she could provide a stable home. It's like she had fought through endless interviews, background checks, and home visits. And today, finally, she had brought the baby home. The child, now stronger, rested in her arms, staring up at her with big, curious eyes. Naomi smiled. Welcome home, little one. Against all odds, against rules, policies, and doubts, she had saved this baby's life. And now she would give the child something even greater. A future, a family, a love that would never abandon them.